she's like, well, we're at home. What should I read? And my default is just the Lunar Chronicles for anybody who wants to start reading. And I was like, well, just have to mention that there is a deadly virus. It's not. This was like April
Yes.
of 2020. Hello and welcome to Fangirl Fields. My name is Olivia.
My name's Tanya.
We're the show Fangirl Fields where we talk about all the books, movies, shows, music, any piece of content that gives us all the feelings. And today this is gonna be hopefully a shorter episode. I'm saying this and I might be biting myself in the butt as I say it, but we wanted to highlight some of our favorite stories that we've experienced over the years, give them kind of a special nod of attention so that if you haven't read or watched or anything with these stories that you should. So we're here to convince you. So today we're going to talk about the Lunar Chronicles.
Ooh, it's a good book. It's a good book, everyone.
It's a great book. It's one of my favorites. It's one of the first books I read. It is the first book I read in my reading renaissance that I continue to call it that because it has a nice ring to it, reading renaissance.
Alliteration, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. I just made it up and I like it. But it was the first book that I read that kicked off my reading renaissance in 2016 and reignited my love of reading. Okay, well, first, we don't really have any fandom feedback today.
That might be my bad. I forgot to add like a Q&A or a question to our latest episode, which was Love is Blind, the reunion. We watched it and we reviewed it. I forgot to add a question, so sorry, y'all. But definitely listen to that episode. It's a good episode.
Love is Blind. Tanya did some good research on that about like the history of Love is Blind, like where it came from, the details. They use like an algorithm. That's nuts.
An algorithm, everyone. Check it out. We learned a lot. I spent less than 24 hours before that episode. I just binged a ton of Love is Blind things. Now I know too much. So check out that episode.
Your brain is polluted with Love is Blind content now.
And I don't want it. So how do you flush your brain? Can someone help me remove this information from my brain? I don't want it.
Ask AI. The AI will do it for you. ChatGPT.
Yes.
I ask ChatGPT to do everything these days.
Right?
Why think when AI? Okay, well, since we don't have any fandom feedback, we did have like one response on our TikTok, the TikTok where we discuss what it means to turn 30 and realizing that you're equally responsible to participate in fixing problems. In the TikTok it was on Instagram, but that video where we discussed like that moment you realize that you have equal responsibility as an adult, she commented, personally, the word I use for that feeling is anxiety. And, she's not wrong. It is anxiety. So I thought that was funny.
I'd relate. That's true. Yeah. It's just anxiety about realizing you have responsibilities.
Yeah, I think I overcomplicated it when that's all it is.
It's just anxiety, Olivia.
It's just anxiety, which I experience frequently, but I think I have different levels of anxiety that maybe even those levels it's just my base level that I don't even consider it anxiety anymore,
It's like, well, also it multiplies by like 1,000 when you're in charge of someone else. You know what I mean? Like we have anxiety for our own lives and like we can handle it, right? Just like we have like baseline anxiety. We're similar. That's why I'm connecting us both. I'm saying both of us. But like when
You're
it's like
absolutely correct.
Yeah, taking care of someone else, whether a child or not a child, another person, it's like, oh, okay, well, call someone else. Bring someone else in. I can't do it.
No, you're absolutely correct. Yeah. There's like an element of I know myself, and if like my like actions only affect me, I can accept the results, right? I can accept responsibility for myself. But the moment that someone else is involved and my actions affect them, yeah, that is too much. Absolutely not. I cannot have any influence. I do not want to be perceived, nor have any sort of influence on anybody.
Done. That's our wish. Don't perceive us.
Don't perceive us. As we have a podcast
Turn this off.
all we do is being perceived. Turn this off immediately. Just cannot be happening anymore.
Just hit
What
the
am I
like button
doing?
and leave. That's it. That's all we ask for.
Yeah, I actually just listen to this with the volume down so that we can still get the points, as if it's a
The
point
points.
system. We could still get the points of you listening, but but please don't actually listen to us. That's all I
We
want.
want the YouTube points for a free Starbucks drink. Come on.
Yes. Is that a thing?
No, I'm joking. I don't just I was like the Starbucks points, or
I do want, I mean, if there was a way that that could like transfer to Starbucks, I would probably do it.
that'd be genius. Who do we talk to?
Hey, YouTube views to Starbucks points. But anyway, that's all for fandom feedback. Pretty short today. Um, Fangirl finds things that we've watched, read. I honestly don't have much. I caught up on The Mandalorian, and that was like fun. The Mandalorian was a weird season, I think, and because I watched 2 years worth of shows and of episodes in 6 weeks, not even 6 weeks, 2 weeks. I don't know. I don't have an opinion, but that's all I really did. What about you?
You did. I want to know because we had to wait for so long from like the first season of Mando to now. And I wonder if that's why everyone's like more upset than they probably should be, is like because we waited so long. We felt like we deserved better, and that was my take on the season. Was just like I feel like they're bringing this to the end, especially as they bring like the Ahsoka Tano spinoff. But overall, what'd you think? What'd you think of the season?
It needed more Pedro's face. That's my immediate feedback, critique. Because we saw Pedro's face in season 1 and season 2, but we didn't see him in season 3. I thought that at the least in the finale we would see his face, but no, nothing.
He'd have to go back to the waters, though. That was why
I
he
don't
jumped
care.
in the
I don't care about this stupid nonsense of whatever it's
undo
called.
that storyline entirely. Start
I don't
over.
I don't believe in this whole like you can't see your who came up with this. I am anti institutionalized religion. Please stop.
Oh my God. Done. And it's
Why
over.
can't he show his face? I'm like not bought into that at all. What is it, the Children of the Watch or something? I don't know. I know nothing.
I really don't. I only know what's on the show, but yeah, silly. And like, I actually didn't know they took off their helmets to eat. That was news to me this season. I was like, oh, I thought everything was done with their head on, their helmet on. They were just like trying to stuff like a banana up, you know?
That's a good question though. So they can't eat together.
Mm.
They have to eat with like their backs turned to each other at the very least.
Yeah, so you can't see their face.
That's upsetting.
It's wild.
I think
Yeah.
I That is wild because I watched season 1 so recently. I know that they mentioned that in season 1 because someone asks Mando. They're like, "Do you or Dinjarin? I guess that's his name. Um, like, how do you eat? Or like, when was the last time you saw your own face?" And he was like, "This morning," because he was like he sees his face. It's just no one else does. Like when he
Oh,
eats and stuff like that.
I forgot
Like
about that. I'll have to rewatch the first season. It's a good
yeah.
time.
But I heard that the reason why Pedro wasn't in this is because he was just too busy filming. Which, as much as I'm so happy for his success, I have heard commentary where it's like, why is the man incapable of coming to this set? Like, where is he? Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Like, show up at the Mandalorian set. I don't know. I love him. This is no
This
hate to him.
man is booked. This man, he's too popular now. Unfortunately, like I'm for it, but
Apparently.
I'm like I wanted him to be a part of the small circle of Pedro fangirls, and we could keep him forever. Now the world wants him, which is great.
It
We're
does.
so happy for him.
We're so happy. Well,
Good.
I'm a new fangirl, so I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for his blowing up. So I
That's
can't
okay.
speak on that.
We talk about him on our podcast, so that immediately puts you into the previous fan. I'm including
I've
you
been
now.
adopted.
Yeah, we've adopted you.
You can like reverse like 5 years of history of
Yeah.
me having no opinion on Pedro Pascal until literally January of this year.
Time isn't linear, so therefore, welcome.
Fair. I love that. That seems like that works.
Yeah.
I accept that as the answer. But anyway, did you watch anything else? this week? I know you seem busy this weekend.
I watched a show called Mrs. Davis. It's on Peacock, which is a terrible streaming platform. It doesn't work. We literally couldn't finish the first episode because it crashed. So we think it's going to be a good episode. We think it's going to be a good season, but it's like a silly show about, and this is all in like the description, so I'm not giving much away, but like you think it starts off as like a period piece. It starts off with like the Knights Templar, and then it goes to modern day times, and it's about how AI is like has taken over the world, or like is very everyone uses it. It's like I forget what the AI's name is, but it has the one of the main actresses from Glow, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, and she is the main character, and she has issues with this AI. She's got beef with it, and so it's funny, and I would recommend it. But I didn't even finish the first episode.
Hey, you're brave with like the things you start. I feel like you're just so open to start new things. We've discussed this, or consumption habits. I don't know why it's such a big hurdle for me to start something new. So I'm like, it makes me like I'm like jealous of how much you're just like, we just started this. I don't know what's going on, but I like it. I like that.
We should record ourselves, James and I, the amount of times we jump around from platform to platform. We watch like something at least every night, like at least one thing. We'll just beep boop boop around to all the different platforms to see what to watch, because we watch so much, and it's a problem actually, so don't be jealous.
I mean, you guys, you find good stuff. You're open to new things. I have like a fist around my heart and like cannot accept and tolerate anything new
A
except at
fist.
very specific opportunities. Yeah, I like literally, it's like, ugh, I cannot. I reject all new things.
Like against your
Cannot.
will.
It is against my will. It's true. I want to. I I downloaded Truly Devious. You told me to read that book. I
Yay!
downloaded it. So that's something new. I'm hoping to read that on the beach because I'm going to the beach next week, listeners. Um, so that'll be fun.
Listeners,
So I'm hoping listeners, because we have so many listeners,
all
which we
5
do
of
actually.
you.
We love you.
Hi, mom. Yeah.
Hi, mom. We love you guys. But yeah, so I'll include that. That's some. I am opening up to something new.
I'm glad, and it's right up your alley of things you'd like, and there's a little love interest that I still think about, and it's cute.
Oh, I do want just like a new romance. God, I just want romance. That's
I
so
just
damn hard.
I want two characters to kiss.
I just want them to get. It's so difficult. Why is this so hard? And kids, it's all I want. I want it to be. I want it to be a slow burn. What was it that Haley was saying? Sunshine. Oh, you weren't there in this conversation, but I've been introduced to. I'm pretty well versed in like the fanfic book talk world. But our friend of ours mentioned a statement where it's like sunshine, grumpy meets sunshine, grumpy slash sunshine fic. And I'm like, what is this? They're like, you would like grumpy slash sunshine fic. And I'm like, what are we talking about? It's like when someone's like a sunshine character, like really happy, and one's like a grumpy character. And I'm like, yeah, I do like
Oh,
that.
like all of Akatar. Okay, I get it.
Essentially, yeah. Well, I don't like grumpy as much as I like shy slash charismatic. You know, like shy
Yeah,
protagonist meets charismatic, charming
confident.
anti-hero.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I like that more.
me too.
'Cause I
Okay,
have
that makes
issues.
sense. Because I have issues.
I mean, it's
Again, our target
just to be
demographic
honest.
is therapists. Please reach out.
Our audience, this is just actually a message to our therapists. They listen to this. We wonder why I'm still single. That's why. Because I also just like as I was describing like shy wit slash like charismatic. That's relevant to the topic today because that's just Crescent Thorn. That's absolutely just Crescent Thorn, and I adore them. They are my favorite. So
Yay! I was gonna say nice segue, fitting with the theme.
I try. Do you have anything? Do we have anything else we want to talk about? Fangirl finds or? Ready to
Nah.
jump in?
Let's
Nah.
do it. Let's jump straight in. Cannonball.
Let's jump straight in. Okay, cannonball in to the Lunar Chronicles, which, like I said, we want to like highlight our favorite things, ones that either both of us have experienced, read, watched, whatever the content is, or if just one of us to share it with you and to share it with each other because stories matter and we love them. So today we're going to talk about the Lunar Chronicles, which is a YA sci-fi series that came out in 2011 and ended in 2016. And there are 4 books. The 4 books are called Cinder, Scarlet, Cress, and Winter. And there's like a collection of short stories called Stars Above. But this is a YA novel, which has YA has bad rep, but I still read YA even in, the year of our Lord 2023 as a 30-year-old. And so that's actually my first question to you, Tanya. What do you think about YA, like as a genre? How do you perceive YA?
I mean, so I wasn't a big reader until like the pandemic, until like 2020. And I mean, so I read a lot like as a kid, and then college it dropped off because I read like textbooks for school, kind of like I my love of reading went away. And then I didn't read until 2020, and then I only now read YA. So mostly for the most part. But I can understand that it gets a bad rep. Like I can understand that perhaps people think it's just for like teenagers, and like I can understand that. But if anything, it's just like fun and like joyous and wholesome, you know? And it doesn't have like adult themes that can sometimes be traumatizing for people.
I agree. I asked this because I had a similar story. Like I didn't read books. I read books in college. I've always read, but I have like phases in which I'm like, we'll be reading books and then I'll have a slump. I think everyone's like that. So I like wasn't reading anything for maybe like 2 or 3 years before I started reading again. And the Lunar Chronicles was the first book that I read. And I remember feeling like, because 2016 was the year I graduated college, got my first like big girl job, corporate job, and was like, what, 23, 24, which is still young, still YA, to be honest. But at the time, I remember feeling like I maybe shouldn't be reading books like this, but I'm going to anyway. And I think that's dumb. That's dumb to limit your enjoyment of things because of these like weird perceptions of, and that's been a story of a lot of things I end up liking. I always felt like kind of guilty because I felt like I shouldn't be in that demographic that enjoys it. But anyway, here's to say now, 6 years later, 7 years later, as a 30-year-old, still recommend this book to all ages. It's incredible.
That's a great message. Like no matter your age, like look
Limit?
at don't limit yourself. You can read whatever you
Yeah.
want. And just because it's called YA doesn't mean it's definitely just for like young adults. It's for anyone.
Yeah. And the books have great themes. They're great. So we'll get into the details of the books because those are important. So the series is set in a futuristic world where there was like World War III or IV, something like that. And afterwards, like the world has entered into a state of peace. Everyone's friends. The countries don't look exactly as they used to anymore. Like the United States is now called like the American Republic, such and such. They're all different countries. All humans kind of coexist in this new futuristic world. However, during this time, people have colonized the moon, and the moon is now being controlled by an evil queen called, her name is Lavana.
Ravana.
Lavana. And people on the moon have been um, evolved. They've evolved to be able to manipulate people's minds because of radiation on the moon having colonized the moon. They've like developed the ability to be able to manipulate people's minds and their perceptions, which is called to glamour someone. But overall, so this is like the general premise of the books, and overall, they are classical fairy tale retellings of Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood, Rapunzel, and Snow White. So each of the books takes on a different fairy tale, but they each like connect to one overarching story. So you know this, Tanya, you've read the books. But something that's interesting that I actually didn't know was that Stephanie Meyer, the books are written by Stephanie Meyer. She had the idea for the series during NaNoWriMo in 2008. So NaNoWriMo, do you know what NaNoWriMo is?
I do.
So she decided to participate in NaNoWriMo that year. And she actually drafted out all three books during that single NaNoWriMo in 2008, which I think is wild that she was able to do that. Her grand total was 150,000 words, and she wanted to compete. Yeah, can you believe that?
Mind
150,000
blown.
words.
Yeah, that's insane. I heard about this fact today. I was like, what? What?
Yeah, really wild. As someone who has wanted to participate in NaNoWriMo, and I'm not like an experienced writer, the fact that you could just like come up with these, like basically write these novels is so impressive in the course of a month. Incredible.
I have to say something. You accidentally said Stephanie Meyer, who is the writer of Twilight.
Oh, Marissa Meyer. Okay, Marissa
I
Meyer.
was like,
Yeah,
Stephanie
yeah.
Meyer? Oh my God.
Stephanie Meyer.
She's just pumping them
No,
out.
Marissa
She's
Meyer.
never stopped, you know?
No, she's never stopped. Okay, I'll say the Lunar Chronicles were written by Marissa Meyer, not Stephanie Meyer. Although I do want to talk about Twilight at some point.
Done. That'll be one of our episodes. I never finished the books, so
Really?
I stopped. I don't know why. I hate myself. Yeah, no, I should read them.
I hate myself. I mean, they're not that great, but it's fine. They're worth experiencing at least once. Anyway, so she finished the draft for at least the first three books during that NaNoWriMo in 2008. She says she had to like rewrite basically all of them, but at least the story was there. At least like the basic plot was there and the basic idea. So inspiration that sometimes it's just like getting it on paper, right? Just write down your idea, knock it out, and you'll who knows what it will transform into, even if it's not like the final thing when you first write it. So I just thought that was an interesting fact. So the books were published in 2012 and they became quickly a New York Times bestseller. And they're praised for strong female characters, diverse representation, and just being creative fairy tale retellings. So that's like a basic summary of the books. I love them because they're just completely guilt free, really enjoyable reads that I think she does a really good job of connecting the fairy tales that we understand in like a new interesting way. It took me literally one like chapter in to be totally bought in. And just because you can recognize the points of the fairy tale that are like you that we know and it's like interesting enough to see those points, but then she changes it up and then like in a way that you don't see the end coming oftentimes. So it keeps you on your toes, but it's also not totally out there that you have no idea what's going on. It's just like a very good job of doing a fairy tale retelling that feels familiar but also different. And I really enjoyed it. So I read them in 2016 and I had a blast and recommend it basically to anyone who comes to me and is like, I want to start reading. I'm like, start with the Lunar Chronicles. They will ignite your love of books, I promise, because they did for me. What about you, Tony?
And fun fact, that's how I started the series. I asked Olivia, what should I read? What should I start getting into? Because that's when I was reading again in 2020. And I actually listened to the series. I listened to the whole series. And it was a great series, a great book. I flew through them. I think like I can remember, we talked about last episode, like we remember where we were when we were watching or listening to anything. It was like winter 2020 was when I got through these, which is fun because the last book is winter, right? Like it has like almost like a snowy theme. So it was cute. It was nice.
See, I tried to recommend it to another cousin of mine, and it was also during 2020. And oh, I didn't mention part of the plot of the books is that there's a virus that's like killing everyone. And so in 2020, that was not a great recommendation for
Right. Yeah.
reasons.
I wasn't traumatized enough. I was like, let's just keep going deeper.
Just like accept it. I didn't remember that that was the plot. So when my friend or like when my cousin, she's like, "Well, we're at home. What should I read?" And my default is just the Lunar Chronicles for anybody who wants to start reading. And I was like, "Well, just have to mention that there is a deadly virus." It's not. This is like April
Yes,
of 2020.
it is a central theme in this book, but you know,
It's so our main protagonist is Cinder, and she is half cyborg, half human, or not even half cyborg. She's like what, like 30% cyborg, something like that. And I typically I don't like when people are not fully human. I ignore. This is the thing with me. I don't like non-human characters. That at first, when I first learned that about the book, I was a little bit put off. I was like, I don't want to read about a cyborg, but it's not a big deal. She's literally just kind of has like a prosthetic leg and hand, and she's human. It's fine. But she receives discrimination because of that, and that is like a central part of the books, which is interesting and well done.
Thought they played that off really well. I didn't even know I'd be into the books. Like at first, like when someone's telling you to read this book, they're like, "Oh, it's the fairy tales along with like futuristic themes," and it's like, why would I read that? But no, they do it in a way that it's not central to perhaps the plot. Like you can still enjoy this book and its storyline and the characters without that being overbearing.
No, it's such a unique it's actually like a I the last book especially kind of reminds me of the Hunger Games. It's definitely like a political it has like a political undertone, meets fairy tales, meets sci-fi, and it's hard to describe unless you've read it truly. I do the last book to me as I was reading it, I was like, this reminds me of Mockingjay. I feel like I'm reading Mockingjay to some extent, which Winter is one of the few final books in a series that I actually think ends the series really well. That is so hard to do. And Winter, I'm like, no, no, it's perfect. I actually think it ended it exactly how it should, which is so hard to do.
Yeah, the way that she wrapped up all of the stories that like each and I know you already explained this, but like each story, each book has brings in new characters, new main characters, right, who weren't there in the beginning, and she was still able to wrap it up at the end. Chef's kiss.
That is so hard. Like you start the first book with just Cinder and like her, love interest, which is Kai, and then it brings on the next one, which is like Scarlet and Wolf. Every book brings on a new character, and I remember being someone who is resistant to change. I don't like changing main characters when we read, especially after you like start a book and you're focused on that one. So like when you finish Cinder, I'm like, I don't want to leave this character. Like I like her. I don't want to abandon her now that I've one book in. But she does a good job of still maintaining the storylines of each of those individual characters while adding this new one. It like gives you the ability to appreciate or to accept a new character while still holding on to your previous ones. Like each one just gets like added on and like adds to the story, and you see how this larger story is unfolding as each of these characters come in, and it's really entertaining. It's very well done.
She just keeps layering it on and it turns into a beautiful cake.
You could tell that she plotted this out, and it's very interesting. Those are books I recommend. I recommend this book so heavily. We can talk about our favorite characters because those are important, and our favorite book in the series, and then that'll probably be it. So, Tony, who are your favorite characters in the series?
Ooh, okay. I really love Cinder. Like the first book, this will also be one of my favorite books, but I love Cinder. I can see myself in her, like the decisions she made, and like she doesn't necessarily always make the smartest decision. Like she'd be a Gryffindor. She's brave, and she is smart, but I think she thinks more so. She always doesn't make the smartest decision, but it ends up working out. And I feel like I can relate, and and also like I feel like I'd be attracted to Kai as well. Like their love interest was one of my favorites in the book. Um, and yeah, I just loved following her along. She was a good main character to root for throughout the story. I love Thorn as well. For many reasons. He's that charismatic asshole that you talked about, but like ends up being like
I got a
he is
type.
nice. Yeah, right. But it works
Hello.
out. He's cute. Yeah, I guess so. He is cute. Um, he is funny, and I think that's what drew me to him too. Is that like he just reminds me of like he's like a little bit of like Jack Sparrow with like I'm trying to think of famous like maybe like Captain America too. Like he's like a component of like all these like heroes and other stories. But he's goofy at the same time. So like a little bit of Nick Miller, like has all of our love interests. Was he in our bracket? He was, wasn't he? He was.
He was, yeah. I never thought of him as a little bit of Nick Miller, but you're absolutely correct. He does. He's a little bit of like a dork and like lame, but like awesome at the same time. Yeah.
The last one I want to mention was Aiko. I really liked Aiko because she's funny. Like I could see myself making the same jokes, and then she's just like thirsty for like Thorn and like other dudes, and for Kai as well. And you need a friend like that, you know, to hype you up. She's always hyping up Cinder, and she's just she ends up being like one of the central characters, and I love that.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things this book also does really well, it should be a show, is it like, yeah, it shows female relationships really well. And I think female friendships are center to the whole thing. Like, yes, each character has like a romantic relationship because why not? And I love it. I eat it up. But the books still focus on the women, and also the female friendships that they form are ultimately like the heart of the series, which is so great. Yeah, Aiko is a great character.
This piece, yeah.
It's a feminist triumph. Yeah, I have to say I have similar favorite characters. Thorn, because I'm predictable. I can't read a book like that has a character like Thorn and not be obsessed with him. I'm very predictable. But I agree, Cinder, I think I relate. I like Cinder and Cress are probably the two characters I relate to the most in the whole book. And it's like tough. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I love Cinder, and she's like the first character you meet, and she's basically the main character. So she is my favorite, but then I'm also Cress in a lot of ways, socially awkward and shy, and like she has like these such a hyperactive imagination. What I love about Cress's arc that I think is important is she goes from thinking that she needs someone else to like help her to ultimately making the decisions to like save herself. And I love that arc for her. Like, love it. I just think it's a really great arc where, especially since she's paired up with Thorn, who like wants to be that character for her, at the end of the day, she's the one that ends up kind of like saving herself. And I love it. It's the best. She's such a great character. She's
One of the greatest like arcs. Yeah, I agree. Like the way that she grew from being a shy person who didn't talk to anyone literally for years and then
yeah,
suddenly is like being a hero. I think that's pretty cool.
yeah. Like I like that they had that whole phrase with each other, like be heroic. Like that he helped her see that she was capable of that. And ultimately she was capable of that. Like I love it. It's just like a nice change from typical, arcs. They remind me very much of Rapunzel and Flynn Rider from Tangled, because they are essentially the same characters. They are space Flynn Rider and Rapunzel.
Space.
Sci-fi.
It's true.
Space exclamation point. Yeah.
I did
Flynn
have a
Rider and
question for
Rapunzel.
you. I was curious if you I at first when I was learning about Cress and Thorn's relationship thought it was a little problematic only because she seemed much younger and I don't know how old they are, but he did seem much older and then also like she was obsessed with him like but didn't know him. So it was almost like her meeting like a celebrity and like I know power dynamic gets thrown around a lot, but I do feel like at first there was a little it was a little weird, their dynamic. And I ended up liking them obviously afterwards, like after they meet each other and after you realize like she ends up not liking him for a while, right? And then after when she met him in person. They grew on me. But at first I was like questioning, like, is this not a little weird?
This is one of my few critiques of the book, is the age difference. I didn't realize there was an age difference, and apparently there is. Like she's like 16 and he's like 20, and I don't love that. And yeah, which is important to know. I didn't realize that reading the books. I thought that they were like around the same age. This is one of the issues with YA, again, too, that these characters are young for no reason. For no reason, right? Like 16 and saving the world. Okay, sure. That's fine. I guess
Right.
that's okay.
Very normal.
Um, Very normal, yeah. But then when you're also, yeah, creating romantic relationships, like they should be similar ages. Like, why wasn't he not just like 18? Which is still an adult, but it is, yeah, there's definitely, I don't know why that decision was made. I mentally choose to ignore it, but it's worth,
Right.
I just choose to pretend they're both in the same age.
Yeah.
Maybe
What
that's a
else can
problem.
we do? Yeah. We still ship them, but yeah, she's just older in our minds. She's at least 18.
They're all older in my mind. Like, they are not 15, 16 years old. Like, that's nonsense. This
Yeah.
is, I'm 30 now. Like, that ain't happening.
It reminded me of like Avatar: The Last Airbender, like this ragtag group gets together and they all are like in their early teens in that group. And I'm like, so it had like similar uh the characters are similar in my mind.
It is very similar, but it's like they are so aged up. Like Thorn is like a captain. He like can fly a ship, which I guess at 20 you can. But I'm like, these are not these are like mid-20s. These are
Yeah.
at the very least late teens to early 20s. Like this is nonsense. They
It's
are not
almost like
16.
would this have been a better story if she aged them up a little bit? You know what I mean? Like if they were like early 20s, late 20s, you know?
And that's one of the things I'm like, I love this story. I think it's really well done. And yeah, I don't know what the age doesn't add anything to it. Like making them young doesn't make any difference to me. If they were, yeah, in their 20s, the story would be exactly the same. So it's just unclear to me like why YA has this like can the story exist outside of the YA genre? Like does it have in YA do they have to be a certain age to be classified as YA? I think yes. I think the characters have to be a certain age. So if you were to age these characters up, but everything be the same, can that book exist? Like, what would be classified as? I don't know, but I think it should. I think it's a great book. I don't know. I'm not it's just. I think it just had they had. She had to make them that age in order to sell it in a certain way to a certain demographic, which is
That makes
unfortunate.
sense.
Sarah. So I mean, this is off topic kind of, but like Sarah J. Maas books are still classified as YA also.
Gross. They should not be.
Yeah. No, they shouldn't. They shouldn't. I think they're like trying to push they created a new genre called new adult and they've like pushed that, but Feyre is like 16, no, 18, 19, which is like older YA but still YA and there's so much spicy content in those books and I'm like how could this possibly be in the YA section? If my 16-year-old daughter was picking those books up, I would scream.
Yeah. Too early for that, for sure.
So there's a discussion to be had about like why books are classified in certain ways to be marketed because this book doesn't have any spice or anything like that. They probably just had to put it in the YA genre, but I think it exists outside of it. I think it can. It's a good book. What's your favorite book, Tanya, of the four?
My favorite was Cinder, and like you mentioned, it was so easy to jump straight into. Like, for anyone listening, even if you don't read through all four, you probably will. But if you don't, at least read the first one and see what you think, because it's so easy to dive into this world. And if you think it's going to be like Cinderella, it's not Cinderella, right? It's like it has components, obviously, of that fairy tale, but it there's so much more to this universe. And this writer did a really good job with the universe building, and she illustrates it really well in this first book. And nuts that she did it in a month. That's blowing my mind. But and I also just really like the first characters that she introduced, like obviously Cinder, Kai, and you kind of get a glimpse into like the history and like the background of the story that you're teleported to. Second favorite was Winter. Like you mentioned, like Winter is not necessarily my favorite character. I do love that she's a black girl who is deemed the most beautiful in the world, and like in terms of like representation, I think that's amazing. I don't necessarily love her character and her love interest. I'm forgetting his name.
Yeah.
Forgettable.
Jason, I believe.
Jason.
Yeah, I agree. They're not my
Jason.
favorite either.
Not the best. Like I do love the introduction of them, but they're maybe not like the standouts, and that's okay. But the book overall, you know, because it has to connect the beginning to the end, is just a great story to read. So those are my two favorites. My
Yeah.
second, my least favorite book is Scarlet, and not because I actually really liked Scarlet. That's her name, right? I liked her, but I don't like the wolf characters. I thought it was odd, and I thought it was like representation of like toxic masculinity, and it reminded me of like the A Court of Thorns and Roses. Like if you like those books, maybe you'll like this the second book, but like it reminded me of Sarah J. Maas books.
I agree. I have that's my least favorite as well. And again, I don't like non-human characters, especially when there's a romantic element to it. I just don't Gives me the ick. I don't like it. So I just pretend that they're not. So the whole wolf thing, I was like, this isn't happening. This
We're gonna
isn't
ignore it.
We're not happening. Yeah, literally. But yeah, I'm aligned with you. That's probably my least favorite book too. My favorite books are probably the same. I put Cress just because like Cinder and Cress are tied for number one, but I put Cress because ultimately I just like that their relationship a lot. Knowing the problematic elements to it, which sucks. I just pretend again that they're both like 18. It's fine. It's a great book. And then Winter, yes, one of the few like finales that are actually good. I actually cannot tell you any other series that has as good of a finale as this book does. Like I've finished a lot of series of well, no, Crooked Kingdom from Six of Crows, also a great finale. But otherwise, I'm like most finales fail. Most of them flop, honestly. I figured to end this, we would do a game of bed, wed, behead of these characters, our non-explicit version of this of this for the male characters for just for fun, just for funsies. So Tanya, who would you bed, wed, behead of the
This
four?
is so
Kai,
funny.
Thorn, Wolf, or Jason? Bed, wed, behead.
Bed, wed, behead. Let's do bed first. I would bed Captain Carswell Thorne, that handsome man.
Indeed.
How
I
about
would
you?
bed Kai. Kai, probably. I would also marry Kai. I would also wed Kai, but I need to marry Thorn. Spoiler. I have to do that for myself. So
Spoiler.
so that's
Oh
what's
my
happening.
gosh. I'd marry Kai. Yeah. I think he'd make a good husband.
So
Isn't he? He ends up being a king still, right? Spoiler alert. Sorry, should have added that. Right? Is that how it ends?
yeah, I think so. Yeah, so that's a good person to marry. Honestly, you are like objectively correct in your assessment in this. Like
Yeah.
objectively.
I'm using science to decide.
Indeed. Indeed.
All
Okay, and
right.
then behead.
Who are we beheading? Oh, this is easy. You'll probably say the same person. Wolf, not my favorite character.
Yeah, I agree, Wolf. I just don't his name again. I just don't like I'm gonna keep saying it, I'm specious. I hope that doesn't mean anything that it's not. I just don't
Oh
like
no.
not like interspecies relationships. I don't enjoy that. I know he's technically human, but anything that's like not a human to human, which I know we've mentioned Accord Thorns and Roses a few times, and that whole story is that to some extent. I just don't like it. I'm just not a fan.
Yeah, represents toxic masculinity. Has anger issues. Not great, right? Because he is like a what was he? He was like created, right, to have anger issues, right? And he can't control it. That would not be
It's like
fun to deal with.
mutated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would never. Granted, Scarlet can like handle it, but I don't enjoy it either way. Like, he's like just the least interesting character to me.
I agree. Too literal. Took that book too literally, I think.
Yeah. Yes, all of them are like creative interpretations of the fairy tale. This one being Red Riding Hood. The Red Riding Hood was, yeah, a little on the nose. We could have done something different. Like he could have been. I just would have made if I was writing the book, I would have made different decisions with him with that story.
Yeah, makes sense. First off, keep him human. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah. First off, keep him human. Yes. But anyway, that was that. That's the episode on the Lunar Chronicles. You should read it. It's a great time. Book I highly recommend to kick off reading if you want to start. That's that. Any other thoughts, Tanya, on the series?
Olivia has great art. Wait, this is next to my chair.
Oh, look at
Woo!
my art.
Look at that. It's
If
Olivia's
you're
art.
watching this, you'll see it.
Hello, go
Oh,
by.
thanks,
Go by.
guys.
I think she has. You still have these on your site, maybe?
I do. I do. Yeah, yeah. Because Marissa Meyer is great. She allows people to sell fan art. She's very fan art friendly. So I sell some merch of it because I love it so much. It's great. I love this. Yeah, this is one of my favorite series. Again, it's like my beacon of books to start reading if you need to read something. So 15 out of 10 would recommend.
Same rating. I give it that too. Yeah, especially if you're trying to get back into reading, it will work. Do this one. Whether you listen or read, because I listen again. Do that. One of the two.
Yeah, the audiobooks are great, which is hard. Like an audiobook will ruin a book, but this audiobook is good. Well, thanks for listening to this episode of Fangirl Feels. I hope you like this. I hope this will motivate you to read a book. If you've read the Lunar Chronicles, no, you have. other friends amongst you, which is us. Next week, we will be sharing our comfort shows, about our comfort stories, which I will mention the Lunar Chronicles again in that episode. But we wanted to give it a special highlight because it is just a top tier book that we both love. So tune in next week to hear about more comfort content that we recommend. But otherwise, we will be back. We'll be back next week. Follow, like, subscribe, leave us a review, comment on all the things, all the podcast stuff.
Give us all your money. Thank you.
So that's actually what we want. Is please give us every. This is actually a hold up. Like, yeah. Give us your money. No, don't do that. And so this is free content. Well, then we'll be back next week. Until then, bye.
Bye.
Bye.